Welcome back to Think Design Work Smart. I'm Alex Bolboaca and I'm coming at you from the Mozaic Works studios. And what I have for you today is a few thoughts about a question that I got. In the past few weeks, I did a very interesting training of technical skills for Scrum Masters, meant for Scrum Masters to understand better the developers, to better communicate with the developers, to understand how to help them overcome their self-imposed limitations often, to understand also what's possible in terms of software development. And I got one very interesting question. We were discussing about continuous integration. And the question was, are there any other ways to integrate? Is a conversation or pair work a way of integration? And I think this is a very interesting question because my mental model for software development is more and more the one of a knowledge refinery. So what I mean by that is that code is very precise in coding knowledge. That's basically what it is. Everything that is in the process, let's say, if you have a specific process that you automate, everything about that process ends up in code, or at least the stable parts, let's say. There are some variations that people do. But what ends up in the code is somewhat calcified, right? But you start from requirements, from needs, from wants, and these are not very refined. These are not very precise. And through the process of development, what we do is to slowly, little by little, refine the knowledge. Another way you can think about it is, if you know how images load on the internet on very slow connections, you would see first just some colors, then you start seeing some objects, and so on and so forth, until you end up seeing the actual picture with everything clear and showing you exactly what it was in the picture. And what this is basically what we are doing with software development, and particularly with agile software development. We start from something that is not very clear, just blurry, and then little by little we clarify it until it ends up in a very precise way. And the most precise way of storing it is through code, because code needs to be understood by a very stupid machine that only knows how to do precisely what you tell it to do. And because of this, I started thinking of how knowledge works, more or less. And the video in the last week was also about this, but this is from a different perspective. And the perspective is that if you look at software development the other way around, so your goal is to end up with code, so how about we start from there and move backwards? And what's happening when you move backwards is you start seeing that there are a few mental models that are happening at the same time. There's a mental model, or that exists at the same time. First of all, there's the reality that surrounds the organization, the product, and so on. But then you have the various mental models of people inside the organization, right? Business people, product, and so on. And then you have mental models of people inside the team. And from all these mental models, you need to end up with a very precise thing, with something that is encoded, that is calcified. And so in order to get there, you need to go through this continuous integration of knowledge. And basically, the continuous integration that we talk about at the developer level is still a continuous integration of knowledge. You're basically taking what other people have done, that is the knowledge encoded in your system, and you integrate into it the changes that you made, which represent your mental model. And so these come together, and this is a type of integration. But then you have other types of integration that happen from the knowledge perspective at different levels. And they happen between people, and they happen between people and code, and they happen between the internal or the organization and the reality, the exterior world. And all these integrations kind of happen at the same time. And one of the challenges of software development is that reality is changing, and it takes a while for organizations to sync their mental models, the collective or the average mental model, with the reality. And then it takes a while for developers to manage to encode that new mental model into the code, of course, by also syncing their own mental model, so the team mental model. And this also relates to other things that I've noticed, like one of the I have a theory about why there's so much conspiracy theory thinking nowadays. Or at least in Romania, almost anyone who you talk to has a conspiracy theory, so that's pretty wild. And personally, I've been cured of conspiracy theories by reading Umberto Eco. Particularly his novel Foucault's Pendulum, which is basically about how conspiracy theories are created and can explode. And my theory about why we have so many conspiracy theories right now is that reality has moved, and many people are struggling to sync their mental models to the reality. And it takes a while, I think, until we'll get, as a society, we'll get the average mental model close to reality. And maybe it's more difficult because changes are faster, although I'm not so sure about that, but it's a possibility. But in general, what I think happens is that there are some kind of ticks, some kind of steps in the evolution of mental models of a group, of a team, of an organization, and that these are non-linear. They happen occasionally. It's kind of you sync from time to time. It takes a while to sync. It might take a generation or two in terms of society. For organizations, it might require changing the leadership in order for it to sync it again to the reality. Look at Microsoft, for example. It was not synced with the reality, and then they changed the CEO with Satya Nadella, and he did a lot of work to sync back So this is all about saying that there's maybe more to consider when we talk about knowledge work. And that all these things, all these integration points, if we really treat software development as knowledge work, all these integration points are important. They are part of the work. So it's not that when you write the code you work and when you sync your mental model you don't. It's part of the same work. Because your work is to, one, keep up to date with the reality as close as possible. You probably can never be perfectly close, but as close as possible. And second, to use the brain power of everybody around you in order to get to that encoded knowledge, precise encoding knowledge, which is the code. So these are my thoughts about this this question. I think it was a very interesting question, and I really wanted to discuss it a little bit more. What do you think about all this? Am I making any sense? Is there anything that's not clear? Is there anything that you take away from this? Let me know in the comments. I love comments. Thank you kindly for the view, and until next time, remember to think, design, and work smart. See you next Saturday.